Give me a villain. I'm sorry. Give me a hero that you personally feel is a villain. Like, universally, it's known as the character is known as a hero, but to you, they're a straight up villain.
Okay, that's a good one.
I don't think I have one.
Oh, I got one. Always got one locked and loaded.
Who?
Batman.
Batman is seen as
that you would say that.
It was either Batman or Professor X, but Batman.
Interesting. Batman. Do you want to explain why really quick?
Oh, very briefly. You're putting people back into a system that you already know is broken. Although you have the finances and the wealth and influence to actually input a system that would heal and help these people. But no, you want to get your rocks off by punching people in the face over and over again.
I like that. I think I was going to say the State Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist, but I think, Dan, I really liked your answer, and that I think that actually I would think that all like singular moving superheroes are villains because
one cop.
Okay, I'm gonna say Batman as well, actually, because I believe that Batman, with all of his wealth and access, has the ability to mobilize and supply communities with the resources to protect themselves. But instead of doing that, he decides to hoard that and just selectively save who he wants, even though he can't save everyone and he's not going to be alive. He just works as a singular person when I think he has the ability and the power to give people the resources to protect themselves. So I think that, yes, he is not a good person. He is selfish, as are most superheroes.
Narcissism.
I have to wonder how much of that is writing.
What do you mean?
All of it.
Like,
that he's the singular focus of his community? Or that he makes himself his own thing? Because there is the Bat family, but you know,
that's not like,
isn't he in Detroit?
The money into like the,
right.
But I'm so like, why don't because this isn't a new thing that people have talked about.
No,
Batman.
crime rates are whatever fictional. This is all fictional, right? But crime rate is intensely high
because of
anywhere
superheroes
else in the world. But because in Gotham, it's because all of them are poor, right? Like,
good point. And because the fact that in Spider-Man, looking at you, and Batman, the reason why there are these supernatural, superhuman entities attacking your city is because you exist. Like, if superheroes actually probably increase crime, not decrease it. So
we're a group of Jonah Jameson.
Yeah, you're out here creating like super monster characters attack people because you exist. So says what's the bull? Jameson? Jameson says this in like the radios on like Spider-Man. It's like, yo, the reason why crime is so high is because Spider-Man exists. So if Spider-Man didn't exist, then crime wouldn't be as high.
It still exists.
Crime will exist naturally.
It won't be people trying to one up a superpowered hero.
Yes, you literally are what makes the city more dangerous. With the intent of saving the city, you actually make it more dangerous. State Alchemist.
No. All heroes are good. Bleed blue.
The opinions of Jayhawk does not reflect the opinions of Scarecrow.
What up, Barflies? You already know who it is. It's Big Dan. Rodan, I'm coming to you live from the 215. Your comic connoisseur, sommelier of sci-fi and superheroes. Here to welcome you to another episode of The Blurred Bar.
Whoa. There it is. No, that is it. That's it.
One more time.
I knew it.
And as I always like to say here, I'm never by myself, because if I was, I would seek help. Jayhawk, how are you doing?
I'm doing good because I'm hailing from the land of Sake, Shinobi, and Samurai. The boy is Godzilla personified. No other name but this to go by. It's your boy, Jayhawk. But there's still one more who needs to introduce themselves.
Because she's never left. She's always been here.
Always.
I've always been here. It's QC.
QC.
Also known as Queen Cobb. For now. I am the video game Ventress, Queen Anti-Flex, and Sony's interim executive assistant with executive privileges.
She got money.
I'm the support character with boundaries. And I'm coming at you live
from the tip.
And the Queen Anti-State Alchemist.
Your intro gets longer and longer as you like learn stuff about you, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
That's great.
it'll be an episode.
What are we talking about today?
Hey, well, first, how is everybody doing? Because we do this once a week, so I just want to check in.
I'm doing pretty good.
You're feeling anti-state.
Feeling a bit oppositional
bleeding
today.
blue.
Right, Josh is like,
He's bleeding blue. Does that mean we have to fight or something?
and I'm just sitting here minding my business, or trying to.
He's the referee. That's not between us.
Is it because of my shirt?
Yes.
Oh, God.
I love that.
Oh no, I look like a oversized chessboard.
No.
Yes. Anyway, I guess we can jump right into the topic.
Jump right into it.
Nobody asked for all that. I feel like sometimes, I don't think I feel this way, but I feel like most blurs and nerds who have been in love with an IP for so long feel like wokeness has been injected into their favorite medium, and they don't want that. And
Stop
I'm
pissing
here
in
to
my
argue that it's
Cheerios.
always been in the ingredients, but you just didn't read the label. Like
back of
the
box.
intersectionality of politics and video games and comic books and all that stuff has always been there, but I guess we just want to talk about it a little bit more. And are we pro politics in our entertainment, or do we really have a choice? Is there a way to live without politics in entertainment? And we got examples. I guess I can start off because as a father of two pre-toddlers, I guess
Little babies.
they toddlers. They just don't pay bills. But I've watched recently Trolls 2, My Little Pony, Zootopia, Raya, and The Last Dragon. All of these movies have very similar themes.
And what are those themes?
That our differences matter. And the themes are interesting in the sense that, like, for instance, Trolls World Tour. The Pop Trolls, and I'm spoilers if you really care, but like the Pop Trolls have this narrative that the Rock Trolls wanted to separate everything and cause division, so that it was important to hold on to their string. Their string is their music, their way of life, their culture. And they were like, we can't join back together with the other different trolls, because the last time that happened, there was chaos. So that narrative was spun amongst the Pop Trolls. They get to the Funk Trolls, who are obviously black trolls. I'm not kidding. The Pop Trolls are identified as white, but
How do you
like
know
American white.
How do you know that?
Because they are.
Or are you sort of living in the same?
No, that's the whole point. But like, then they get to the Funk Trolls, and Funk Trolls were like, y'all have the luxury of the winners get to make scrapbooks, is what one of the lines in it. Because Pop Trolls make scrapbooks, and they're like, this is how we know our history. And Anderson .Paak is one of the characters in it, and he goes,
Oh boy.
the scrapbooks get written by the winners. And they were like, oh, you want to know what really happened? The Pop Trolls took their string, or took everybody's strings, and wanted to appropriate it. And all the other different trolls were like, let's take our strings just so we can keep hold of our culture. And I was just like, my kids are watching this.
So your idea
They get it, but
So your idea is that media nowadays is not just intending to entertain, but also to send a message?
I think it always has been the case, right?
Always has been the
But-
case, like as long as media has existed?
Propaganda has always been propaganda. And I feel like we've stigmatized the word propaganda because it means it's either counter culture to your personal opinion, and that's why you would call it propaganda, right? Like Fox News would watch Trolls and be like, this is woke, and then a person of color like me would be like, I see what y'all did there. White people don't really get it, but it doesn't really matter. But you're like, at least they did it for us. So,
that's a good point. I appreciate that point, because the point about it seems to be something that's being highlighted a lot as of late.
Yeah.
But media has always been intended, even children's media has always been intended to send some message, right? Even if it's like a cautionary tale about why you shouldn't treat people badly or why you shouldn't be lazy. Like, cautionary tales has existed as long as reading and writing has existed, but there seems to be like this emphasis on like, oh no, like media is now trying to force my kids to be blank, or they're trying to shove these things down my kid's throat or down my throat so that I become this. And I think sometimes the question is like, sometimes I think all media, I think, has some sort of messaging, right? It's always intended to send some sort of message, but some messages we get more upset about as a culture than others.
Sure. I mean, a lot of people love Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when the entire thing's about gluttony and like the concern of health, you know, like the food you're taking in and the media you take in, all these other things. It's a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
But everybody's kind of just like, oh, Gene Wilder was amazing in that movie.
All children's media is, at least from the gate, because even children's media regarding like children's books, like a lot of children's books, especially like German children's written books, or even like, what's those brothers' names that did the Grimm brothers? It's always been about, it's cautionary, like, don't do this because this awful thing will happen. So like messaging has always existed and has existed as long as children's entertainment has existed, because I truly believe that it's, especially like in American and European media, like that comes from the place of not liking children. But it's always been like, you will die if you do not wash the dishes.
I mean, Alice in Wonderland's about drug use.
That is a theory.
No.
But this is a theory.
What theory?
I mean, I don't think
acid trip.
I mean, that is our interpretation based off maybe the movie, but not.
He was on all kinds of drugs. This is known fact.
It's not known fact.
Yes.
It is not known fact. It is an interpretation
I
of.
think the issue with some of
Thank you for getting us back on track. I was getting ready to go down
the rabbit hole.
I hate it here for the first time ever. I think the issue is when the messaging is shoehorned.
What do you mean by that?
So like
less subtext?
For me personally, I don't care if the thing has a message or whatever, if the media has a message or whatever, or the show or whatever I'm watching has a message. I hate it, or I don't hate it, but like I feel a certain type of way when it feels like it's not really conducive or supporting the story.
Can you give an example?
If for and this is a touchy subject, but I feel like sometimes when they make a character have certain choices that seem out of the blue, it feels like, especially if this is a long-running show.
We need you to give examples. So I feel like you're thinking of something in your head.
Oh, it's very specific.
Okay, go ahead.
Very cancelable.
Tell us. Tell us.
No.
Now, are you saying it objectively?
Yeah, no, like
if you're saying it objectively, I feel like,
or even subjectively, but
I just think that sometimes
I feel like
now you have to say
we're
it.
censoring ourselves. The problem is that you're doing the same thing that you're kind of accusing.
You have to say it now. You went too far in.
Like
you've gone too far.
Yeah, what show are you thinking of that may do these things?
I'm personally thinking about is it A Million? Yeah, A Million Little Things. They made that's not like an anime or anything. This is like a live action NBC drama, like BS show.
Okay.
Not BS. They do good work. They got their bag. But this show had been going on for like, I want to say at least 5 seasons, and there's this character, and there is is a character who's a woman who she like has a child. She had like a whole husband or whatever. And she's like dating other guys, this, that, and the third. And then at the beginning of I want to say it's the 7th season or something like that. Her lady best friend comes into town, and then they start hooking up. And this is after like, for point of reference, this is after like George Floyd and like all the like protests and all the things. This is after 2020 pretty much, when they came back and they were like, okay, well, let's like continue with the show. And it's like, I feel like, why not just introduce a new character who fits that DEI initiative, instead of it felt like a shoehorn of like,
we have to make a change, and
we have to make a change. This has to be like, let's try to, garner some new viewership and make this happen. And like, I guess they wrote it in the best way that they could, but at the same time, I'm like, and this is the thing, and this is why it's such a touchy subject, because it's like, we've never seen this character ever have any kind of like ideations or anything like that. But as many people know, they have to hide themselves, right? And like, they have to like, they feel like they can't hide themselves, and they feel like they might have to, and like, they might not even know until something happens. It just felt very weird. And like, it's when the episode has like the black episode where it's like racism happens, and it's like,
yeah,
okay, like, I get it, but at the same time, it feels shoehorned.
And so it may not be you critiquing the writer's choices as much as the writing itself, right? Like, there's been a conducive flowing story, and all of a sudden it feels very interrupted from your perspective. So I think that doesn't necessarily demonize you not liking it, because choice from either side of it, right? Like, someone might have seen that episode and been like, I'm all in now for the rest of this season, and someone else could just be like, and I think that doesn't necessarily apply to just topical subjects as far as like sexuality or race, but at the same time it can. Like, I was a little hands off on when they made Sam Captain America in the comic books. Like, I had already experienced the pain before everybody else did, and I was just kind of like, sure, I guess I could see America being represented by a black person, but I don't think that it really makes sense to me. I also don't think when the writers did this, which I'm not going to call out this writer, but sometimes I feel like he just does stuff to do it, or they pick him to do stuff for this, and it doesn't. To me, it never lands. But we'll move on.
But I think that's my issue with it, when it's like, and that's what I mean by shoehorned, where it's like, that was a weird turn, and it's kind of like, needing a black Superman. It's like, why don't you just create a new character?
And we say that a lot here, and I think it's important to recognize, like, even for the politics and social commentary that we now see in our different forms of media, right? Like, I don't know, Wolverine and Jean Grey and Cyclops being a throuple. I'm just kind of like, well,
are they like officially a throuple now?
Yeah.
Like, they're cool, like they're open relationship?
I think like,
but I mean, the whole community of X-Men kind of just like, oh, love is love. And
they all get down.
It's just a poly thing.
that's interesting. My thing is that it really just comes with this sort of like merge or like conflation of political commentary or socio-political commentary or social and political commentary meeting, and then entertainment feeling like they need to incorporate this commentary into the content. So like, I'm thinking of shows that typically have done it, and I have like a weird lens on it because I'm still like, I was very, very young when like shows like South Park and Family Guy came out, so I'm like kind of new coming into it. But South Park, and I know that South Park has always what sort of built South Park or made South Park as controversial and as funny as it was that they were always commenting and making fun of what was happening in the world. And Family Guy is big on, like, their whole deal is like commenting on what essentially the 80s. Essentially, like, Family Guy's comedy is built off of things that have been happening in the 80s in pop culture. That's essentially like the backbone of Family Guy. Yes, Seth MacFarlane, up until a point. And then now recently, within the past maybe 5 or 6 years, maybe a little bit more, it seems like I remember vividly when there was an episode where Peter accidentally shot Cleveland Jr. And it felt so like, why was this?
Years ago, that was literally, I think, after George Floyd, right?
No, it was way before that.
It was before.
It was when another black man was murdered, like before George Floyd, right?
It was around the same time.
And part of it could be like, on one hand, it could be like, hey, when Family Guy was brand new and fresh in 1999 and 2000, I wasn't around and current with what was happening in pop culture, even though, like, I know for sure that they were
that's close to home.
Right, even though I know for sure that they were mostly referencing things from the 80s.
Trayvon Martin.
Yes. Yeah, even though I know Family Guy has always historically referenced the 80s. But this most recent thing with, like, Cleveland Jr., it felt like, are y'all just doing this because it just happened? Are y'all trying to, like, make light of it? Are y'all trying to put up a mirror to it? Because that's essentially what shows like Family Guy and South Park have. Their intent is to put a mirror up to, like, something, right? And Family Guy does not do a good job at it with anything before the 80s, while South Park seems to do it consistently. But for some reason, the more recent that the event or the thing happened, the harder it hits. And I don't know whether that's just the writer's intent or if it's just bad writing or tasteless writing. It's really hard to tell because I'm living in it as being written, and it feels very lazy and it feels very tasteless and not funny.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether my sense of humor is coming from, yo, this is something that just happened and it's very recent and these are people's lives, or it's the fact that I was so detached from what was happening in 1997.
Why not both?
Is it I feel like it's
I also feel like it's
versus sensibility.
I also think it's just bad writing. I think like they just don't know what to write about it anymore. But also I feel like, what is it that pushes these creators, these artists, these writers? I think the overall question is, why is there this need to incorporate what's happening in the news into your work? And I think what you were saying is it feels weird because y'all never did this before. But now there's this pressure to, like, incorporate what's happening in the world in your works.
Well, I think there's a two things going on. I think one, people are asking to be represented in the space.
Who is?
Representation across the board.
Yeah,
minorities,
we're asking
marginalized
for
people.
Okay.
You know, people who feel that they're marginalized.
People are like saying like, hey, like, why can't we see X, Y, and Z, this, that, and the third? And
why not cast an actual person that's already of that?
Okay.
So I think there's that. I think on the other side of the camera or the other side of the TV, bigwig execs who are tone deaf, are saying like, hey guys, like, make something work.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is. And that's how you get Cleveland Jr. being shot after a black kid gets shot. And it's like,
with the intent of what? To make people laugh about something that is serious? Or is it to paint a picture? Or is it truly to say, yo, this is America, or this is, like, it's really hard to tell the difference, and maybe because you're a comedy person, but I don't really know, like, at what point is this satire where it's like, I'm trying to show you this is how the world is through comedy? Or how is it just like, and then what the other side of it is like, oh, this is just kind of put in here, it's not funny, It's not clever, but you have this weird intent to do question mark.
I have a question. I have an answer to that, unless you got one.
I was just gonna say, look at comedians, because they are the ones who walk that line almost, depending on the comedian.
Their work in general, yeah.
They're towing that line all the time, where it's like, this could be offensive, this could be not. Either way, it is showing up a mirror, and I think there has to be a bit of honesty for it to be humorous, in a way. and something like Family Guy, I mean, they're not really shooting for a message, right? I think South. Okay, it could be argued.
I'll make the argument after here.
It could be argued, but I think South Park.
You think so?
I think South Park does such a good job because they make it so outlandish that's like, but like it could be a clip, kind of like Boondocks, where like there are things that people have actually said, and then they just like make it animated and like change the environment or the scenario. But it's like, no, these are things that like people actually say. These are things that people like actually like get behind. Mm-hmm. But you see how ridiculous it sounds, right? And but like Family Guy, I don't know. They just get, to your point. I don't think they don't do it as well as like South Park or the Boondocks.
The risk that Family Guy faces is that it's on public television,
and that look at who actually enjoys and Family Guy. Like some of the people that believe
fan base.
I love. I that is my guilty pleasure, right? Family Guy and South Park are my guilty pleasure.
I've watched that episode more than once for that reason. I was just like, am I being offended because of the color? Right? It's the race topic. And they address both sides of it, right?
Do they?
Like they do.
Okay.
Because I feel like Peter was like, I'm protecting my friend's home. I don't know he couldn't identify who it was breaking into.
Right.
Right. Which is often like the Karen narrative. Like, I'm doing this for the good of my community. Because that's how they set up the episode, is that they're the neighborhood watch.
Yeah.
But also they talk about gun control and how Peter should not be able to get a gun that quickly. And he ends up getting one. But like they talk about all that.
Yeah. But my issue with I'm sorry to interrupt you, but my issue with Family Guy is that I think that it was tone deaf and bad writing and weak, because who the population of people that enjoy shows like Family Guy and South Park,
kids, yeah,
not kids, not
kids,
children,
millennials, because no boomers are really watching Family Guy.
But the thing is, the people that good point, but the people that actually like truly like watch Family Guy and South Park are probably the people that are for like Peter shooting at Cleveland Jr.'s son. Those are the people that find that
America watches.
Definitely.
Yes, I mean I know.
Well, no, I'm saying like let's call a spade. Like.
Same thing with like Rick and Morty. Like Rick and Morty, we know the population of people that typically are attracted to shows like Rick and Morty, right? We know like it's Rick and Morty is for the incels, right? I'm not saying that all the incels love Rick and Morty, but I'm saying like we can tell. Listen, I like Rick and Morty, but I'm saying like we know who this show is absorbed by the most, right? So we have to be careful with these messages, right? Where Family Guy is a show that has existed since 1999, to my knowledge. Yes. They know who watches Family Guy. So when you put out these messages, who is it and this comes to the question that we asked last season, is who is this actually for? It's not intended for people of color or people that are impacted by this to say, yo, look at them putting up a mirror to like the way the world is. No, it's actually the people that are watching it. And Family Guy treads a line where it's like, you know where Seth MacFarlane is politically. He's more so a centrist. He's not as liberal as like, he's not that liberal. No, he's not. He's more so like a centrist.
I think that also.
And that's dangerous.
No, here's why. Because I probably would align myself more as a centrist in most regards, and the reason why I say that is because a lot of both sides of the aisle are ridiculous, and the extremes that things are being taken to for both sides are wild to me.
No way. That like hyper liberal agenda is not actually real.
That's not true.
Like they use stuff that's like not even like extreme liberal stuff is not really real. That is like
extreme conservatives to me are the same kooky people.
We can't go down that rabbit hole.
We can't.
But here's
because I wanted to get back to the Family Guy thing, because that specific episode's a great example.
I'm sorry that we're focused on Family Guy. That was my fault.
But I think that episode's a great example of like the responsibility of a creator, right, or a medium.
Because what is art?
It's subjective. But
it's also meant to make you feel something.
Right, but like
sure.
Candyman.
Comedy is very nuanced. Like, I know you looked at Josh for comedy, but like I take in all of it.
I was very
Josh
impressed.
Is like, I'm
I was
humble.
like, thank
He's
you.
Thanks for picking me. But like, I look at comedy very like, I look at like the formulaic process of comedy, and I can accept comedians from the Dave Chappelle's, Bill Burr's to the Bo Burnhams, who are kind of like the John Mulaney's, who kind of like play it a little safe, things like that.
He's hilarious though.
But when, like you said, the target audience right now that looks to stuff like that are red flags to like the target audience that is for. And I don't even know if they're the target audience, but they're the people who consume this stuff, the Rick and Mortys and all that. I don't think they're incels. I think
I'm sorry, Rick and Morty fans.
I think that a lot
We
of it
know.
comes down to just being like in the house, not communicating with real people.
Are you not describing?
I'm like my video game creators like building an incel right now. No, I get that.
We
But,
know
like,
incels love Rick and Morty.
But I feel like there's also like, because we say incels and I feel like the demographic is men, right? But it's not just men who are taking this in.
There are women incels?
I mean, by definition, yes, but we already know who are the incels.
But like by we default incels to men. So
Yeah.
like, I get that too. And we would make the argument that like some women are more like sensitive to comedy, but I don't think that's the case. I feel like Bill Burr made a comment, and I'll let you go from here. He said, if one woman laughs at my joke about like he's made like WNBA jokes, like comes at women sometimes. It's like, if one woman laughs at my joke and the other woman doesn't, that means to me that the joke was funny, and that one was just choosing to be offended and the other one chose to laugh.
Chose to laugh? Is finding something funny like a choice?
Yes, all the time. Because I could be offended by the comments you made about Rick and Morty's incel thing, and I'm like,
Offended?
Sure, I watch Rick and Morty.
I also said that like I'm saying like incels typically are the ones that like elevate the show, right? But it doesn't mean that everybody that watches Rick and Morty and enjoys it are incels, right?
But that's what I'm saying. The same people, like, you could have been offended. You could have been offended by the Family Guy episode, while I'm over there like.
But I'm saying like, but that I don't know. Is that really by choice? Like, like I said, like Family Guy is like kind of like my guilty pleasure, and that like I find it funny even though I know it shouldn't be. Like there are things that it's like I laugh at where it's like that's not funny. Like that's kind of like comedy is kind of like I don't know.
I feel like comedy is, if anything is a choice, choosing to laugh.
No way.
A thing.
No way. That's the same as like crying. Like laughing and crying are actually very similar.
Sure.
They're like
cry. I choose.
You can't really choose to.
I think the issue is the semantics of choice.
Choice, right? But
Semantics when it comes to choice.
Well, because it's like it's whatever how it affects you.
Right.
So like, is it a choice like of like unconscious like?
Because I feel like a lot of people these days choose to be offended.
How can you choose to be offended?
We're not gonna get into that right now.
You can't
I
choose-
just want to say one
I think
thing.
that applies to the topic of this episode, right? Like a lot of people, right wingers will choose to be offended if they see anything liberal in their media,
And or choose to be offended for somebody or something.
Exactly.
Or do they choose to use their offense as a weapon, right? Because I think that
Both
that's
sides.
the choice. No,
Sure.
I don't think that if you say something that like hits me where it's like, I felt that in my heart, that's one thing. But if I decide to use that feeling that I have as a way to attack you back or to say something, that's the choice, right?
Sure,
But I
or
can't, I don't have any,
choose to be offended.
you can't really choose to be offended.
I
You
think
choose
that-
you choose what
You
to
can
do with the
definitely choose
offense.
Two things. The first thing is I think it is hard, almost nigh impossible for me to know your intent on why you tweeted something. So if you say that you were offended by something, there's no way that I can prove or disprove that you were or were not.
Sure. No, sure. I could say that upset me or I'm offended by that, and you really have no idea whether I'm using that terminology as the weapon, or am I saying that because that's just coming straight from how I feel. Because a lot of people take it further where it's like, hey, I felt that in my body and I don't like how that feels. And some people keep it there. But other people are like, oh, I felt that in my body, so I'm about to use this
and make sure you never
and make sure that you never have a job again.
And some people are just like, oh, I think I can ride the coattails off of this. Let me, like, I'm not even offended, but like, I'm not really offended, but like, let me make noise about it.
Sure, but then you're not really offended. You're using the language.
There's no way that we can tell that from a tweet or even from people postulating out in the open.
Sure.
There's that.
But we know what offense. As people, we know
that video, that picture.
Oh, stop it.
But we know what offense.
People chose to be offended by that.
No, people chose to act on maybe a feeling or an absence of a feeling.
Their offense on.
Exactly. Right. That's the choice.
However, being offended, the act of being offended is a choice.
Like, you mean feeling offended or use? That's not a choice.
Sure is.
No way.
Sure is.
There's no way that feeling offended is a choice.
Absolutely sure.
How? How is feeling something a choice?
So sorry to take it there, but Stephen Furtick did a whole sermon about this.
there is no feeling that is a choice. It's what we do with the feeling.
True. If you take
tell me a feeling that's a choice.
If you take in all the evidence of an experience, right, and then logically process it through.
Feelings are not really logical. Feelings are how our bodies react to something that happened.
Which is why we have to constantly reassess, right, and readjust, because we realize that first reaction,
that's the feeling.
It's not even a feeling. It's literally just kind of just like I said, a reaction, right? I feel by using the words offended.
Okay.
Is you took time to ingest all of what was directed, not personally always at you, but to take it, ingest it, and then twist it into this venomous emotion that now has consumed you to the point where you have to either let it out or internalize it.
Sure, but those are two different processes that are happening. There's the process of feeling something, and there's the process of reacting to the feeling that you're having. Like, if I'm angry at you, I can't control necessarily like the feeling that I got because of something you did, but what I do have control over is what I do with it. Like, if I'm angry at you, I can decide to hit you, I can decide to talk to you about it, I can decide to like smear your name. That's the choice. There is what I do with my anger, but the anger itself that I feel, I don't have control over it. I don't have control over feeling that way.
And I think the question is whether or not being offended is the action after.
Well, offended is not actually a feeling. Offended is sort of like, it's a way to describe a set of feelings. Like, feeling offended can mean I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel embarrassed, I feel betrayed, right? And I can feel all these things and do 8 different things with it, right? I can if I feel embarrassed, I can decide to not say anything to you, or to not talk to you again, or to like tweet.
But that's what I'm saying. To acknowledge something offending you is a secondary process of just like everything is culminated of all the other stuff, right? Hurt, anger, embarrassment. Sure.
Yeah.
But for you to come out and say this offended me, that you took it all in, process it
to say that I'm offended by that.
Let it.
Yeah, that's a choice. For me to
choose to be offended.
No, that's not choosing to be offended. It's choosing to tell you that I'm offended. Like, the choice is what I do with that offense.
Because here's the thing, though. If you said that, hey, that really, I feel offended by that because that really hurt me and that made me feel sad.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say I feel offended. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
sure.
I mean,
like the semantics of it is just
right.
And we're arguing semantics here. But
yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It's, to me, when the word offended is used, that means it took time past the initial feelings.
But people typically don't say like, hey, like you said, like people don't typically say, I feel offended. They'll probably say like, I feel some type of way, or I'm upset, or I'm angry. That all
say like that offended me.
We've learned.
But offended is right, because offended is offended is like
it doesn't get down into the nitty gritty of what's actually happening.
Though we can guess what some of those feelings. If somebody says they're offended, we know that they're not saying they're happy. We know that they're saying negative feelings like embarrassment, anger, sadness. We can guess, like, because we know offended is a negative connotation, so we can sort of guess what some of the specific emotions are. Mm-hmm. The choice is how you use those feelings. to either resolve the situation, make the situation worse. Like, that's kind of like the choice. So you can't really choose to be offended. You choose what to do with the offense.
Welcome to the Word Bar Dictionary.
It matters, because I don't think that necessarily people choose to be angry about something. People choose to present or express anger, or express, maybe even if they're not angry, express like excitement about something.
Stuff like that is very subjective, right?
What's subjective?
I could tell a joke and you don't like it. Josh does.
Okay, sure.
Right? Then society's going to ask us to break down why Josh liked it.
Maybe.
Right? Or vice versa. You like the joke, Josh doesn't. Why? Is it a little bit more personal for him? Because he has chosen to let something very specific apply himself to the situation or the joke that he doesn't allow himself to laugh to.
That's not a choice.
That is a choice.
That's not a choice.
It's definitely a choice.
That's not a choice. If you say something that
I'm gonna say something very personal here.
Go ahead.
About myself.
Yes. If you want to, if you feel comfortable doing that.
I won't out anybody, but on a regular basis, family members of mine have made jokes about my dad passing, and it's the way that we cope. Now, those jokes may not land with anybody else, like in reference to death, right? Losing a loved one. And, you know, whether or not you think it's healthy or if I should go to therapy, pay for it, buy a shirt. But, but, you know, that certain subject, that type of subject may be offensive to someone.
What about you?
Not me.
So it doesn't hit you.
Not in the way that people think it should, like where I should be like, oh, I'm sad again. I laugh.
But how does it hit you if someone in your family makes a joke about your dad passing? What does it do?
I laugh.
So it's funny.
I find it funny.
Do you have any control over it being funny, or is you just?
Yeah, I could let it. I could take into account all the other.
What is the gut reaction when a person in your family makes a joke about your dad passing? What's the first feeling that comes to you?
I look for the joke and I look for the humor.
I said, what's the first feeling, not the first thought.
I laugh. I don't.
I said feeling.
Jovial, yeah. It's a feeling of haha, humor.
Funny, right?
Yeah.
But isn't there a space between stimulus and response?
There has to be.
A space between stimulus and response?
Yeah.
No question mark?
Ooh, that was deep.
Wait, really no, that's like a science. Is there something in between a stimulus and a response to the stimulus?
There's a space between stimulus and then response.
Like touching something and then your brain telling you that you're touching something.
No, that would be a part of like response, right?
Touching something, acknowledging your brain acknowledging that you touched something.
Yeah, that's response. That's a part of the response. So if you say if like you as a child, and what are we talking about? Say if as a child like you were always like punched in the arm really hard. So it's kind of like this. You've been conditioned where it's like your arm is always punched. Your arm is always punched, right? So there's like this sensitivity in that area where it's like I'm finna be attacked. If I like go to touch your arm, you know, you may jerk back or like your body sort of prepares itself to almost be attacked. That is all a part of the response. The stimulus is me sort of like coming towards your arm. The response is like the whole response period is like your brain connecting with the stimulus and the stimulus connecting to a past experience, which impacts your
choice to react.
Not choice. It's not a choice.
Everything.
It's not a choice.
But it would be a choice.
It would not be a choice. What?
So let's say in that same scenario, I've been punched, and I've learned to like either knock it away and hit you, or like take the punch, right? So now when you do that, when you do the stimulus, I now have the response of choice to be like, oh wait, what's happening? It's Alicia. She's cool.
But
I'll let her hit me.
But you deciding to
me deciding or me choosing.
You deciding to don't you dare, because you're trying to make it seem like I got.
No, I don't think that.
But my thing is that like our brains are constantly trying to not do work. right? Our brains are constantly trying to not use itself. So we would depend a lot on our body's experiences to dictate the future.
I don't disagree.
So if I'm always, and also a part of that is like kind of like trauma too, where it's like if I'm constantly, I know y'all saw like that open neck thing, or that, what are some things that like people did
Open
as
neck,
kids?
no respect.
Open neck or no respect, where they would kind of like do this. And the thing is, like, if that is done to you enough, or if you've witnessed that enough, if someone even gestures in a certain way where your body would indicate this, my neck is finna be in danger.
Classical conditioning.
That's right. That's not a choice. That is your body.
You choose how to react.
It's not a choice. That's your brain is not trying to work. It is your body. It is your body reacting to a stimulus. It's not choice.
Your body tenses up, sure.
That's not a choice.
Sure. But how you respond to it is still a choice.
Not necessarily. No, because the fight or flight response is not a choice. That's your brain just saying, body, just go ahead and do what it is that you're finna do.
The fight or flight response.
How is it not informed? It has taken evidence of previous experiences and then.
But it's not your brain making, because your brain, in order to like sort of make decisions on something that's happening, that takes time. And your brain is when you're in survival mode, the idea is you are more likely to survive if there's less like if your brain is like processing.
The issue with time is that it is measured even to the smallest fraction.
Yeah, but your brain is constantly trying to work to
even to the smallest fraction of it.
Sure, but your brain is trying to not do work.
If we got away from the subject, so
you did. You need to cut all this out.
My whole thing was my second question was, there was a person who I was speaking with a friend about, where if they
that tangent might have to get cut out.
You know this person.
Cut it all out.
You know this person. They have a certain nickname that they do not like anymore. And so we were talking, me and
needless to say, I gave them that nickname and I wish I could walk.
It's fine. But me and a person were talking about how funny it would be if we could start making skits off of that person using that nickname. The issue is the people who would gather around it and be like, but no, like, that's true. Like, and they wouldn't see the mirror being put up to their face of like, why that's weird. And so that's why they do not choose to go by that nickname or do things by that nickname. Because it's like,
if y'all do use it, I want my coins.
But isn't like good comedy?
Comedy is subjective. No, there's no such thing. To me, I don't think comedy is good or bad.
But what we consider good comedy, doesn't it?
That makes you laugh.
Listen.
That's it.
Let me finish.
Start to finish. I'm sorry.
I'm saying like, no, sure, you're right. But I'm saying like, or more specifically on the topic of satire, where they're trying to like, there's a point. And like, it doesn't always have to. Not all satire is political.
Well, I mean, in the course of this episode, it has to be.
This episode that we have strayed so far away from. But I feel like good comedy, good satire, right? It doesn't necessarily have to give you all this context, right? You kind of know based on how it's based just on the performance itself. Like, you know that they're making it. There's a statement, but then there's this background of the statement that's already there, where it's like, yeah, I know you're making a joke about this and it's funny, but it's trying to prove this other thing. I feel like good satire or successful satire or the statement of satire, the word satire is like, you don't need to give this backstory. It's kind of implied because it's done correctly, hence the word satire. Hence, because if satire is done wrong, is it really satire?
Here's the thing. I think,
is it satirical if it's done wrong?
I think that in the grand scheme of things, that is correct. But there have been many instances of people I know personally who may or may not watch the news, so they don't have that context and they don't have that background. So for them, they might not get the joke. So for them, it might be offensive.
Why are they as in the audience member?
Right.
And you're going to see someone that is satirical?
That's that's seeing a comedian. But if you're watching TV in a group of mixed company and everybody gets the joke because they watch the news and somebody doesn't get the joke because they don't watch the news,
then that's kind of like that. Oh well, with that particular genre.
But that's kind of where we stand on it.
What
do you mean?
Why it's subjective.
That's why it's subjective, right? Because
I mean, but
you have
but
to have a bunch of prerequisites to accept
but if you don't
a
get it,
joke and take it in. Well, Barflies, we've reached the end of the episode. Thank you for sticking along with us. I know a lot of things were talked about, and you may have some opinions for yourself, but
please tell us your opinions.
we have quest items.
Quest items.
And I don't know if you want to use this one or not, but it's a lens
That was
based
an
on your
interesting giggle.
moral objections and objectivity. So however you see the world, use this lens and it will be whatever you perceive it to be. But we're moving on because we have Philly Otaku Con April 14th to the 16th at the Cherry Street Pier. We will be there.
I better see everybody there.
Everybody,
It's free.
it is free.
It is free.
And we'll be there. We'll be there with content. On the 15th of that weekend, we will also be recording a podcast.
And we want to talk to you.
And we will see your faces. We have activities. And I feel like saying activities makes it sound like summer camp. But we are doing some
is
very
precisely
content-driven stuff. And we'd love for you to be a part of it. So when you come down to Cherry Street Pier from the 14th to the 16th, come find us. We'll
Invite
be
your
there.
friends.
There'll be
Come up
merch.
to us.
Yeah.
We're like really awkward.
You're really awkward, but everybody else will be available to talk to. And once Cobb feels warmed up to you, she'll talk to you too. That's
Yes.
up to you.
You need-
that is completely her call, and don't make her feel uncomfortable
Do not.
because she'll make you feel uncomfortable.
Will I?
As we always say here, God bless you. Peace.